Some of the strongest Viking warriors never touched a barbell, yet could flip a ship's oar with one arm, drag a full-grown man across wet sand, and lift stones so heavy that modern gym athletes refuse to believe they were real. And the most surprising part? Much of their strength didn't come from battle. It came from rituals, traditions, and daily training woven quietly into their lives, hidden in plain sight for over 1,000 years. For centuries, we imagined Vikings as wild raiders with brute, unthinking power. But behind the myths lies a deeper truth. Norse strength was not an accident of genetics or savagery. It was a cultivated discipline, a lifestyle carved into cold landscapes, long voyages, and a culture that treated training like a sacred duty. Their bodies were not built in gyms, but forged in fjords, forests, and frozen mornings. A fusion of functional strength, relentless endurance, and spiritual resilience that shaped one of history's most formidable warrior societies. If you strip away Hollywood's roaring berserkers, what remains is far more interesting. Men and women who believed that strength was a reflection of character. A person's worth was measured not only by what they could conquer, but by what they could carry, endure, and overcome. Today, we'll step into their world. We'll explore how they trained, why it mattered, and what these ancient habits can still teach us about our own bodies, our own spirit, and our own pursuit of strength. This is the story of Viking strength rituals, how Norsemen trained through lifting stones, rowing across violent seas, relentless calisthenics, and combat drills that shaped some of the toughest warriors the world has ever known. And perhaps, by the end, you'll see their training not as history, but as a mirror. Number 1. The stone that judged your worth. Centuries ago, in a small Icelandic fishing village, there stood 4 stones: Amlodi, Halfdrettingur, Halfsterkur, and Fulsterkur. They didn't look like much, just rough boulders resting in the wind. Yet to Viking men, these stones determined their fate. If you could not lift at least the Halfdrettingur, the half-lifter, you weren't allowed to work on a fishing boat, not out of tradition, but because the sea would swallow any man too weak to fight against the brutal North Atlantic. Strength was literally a qualification for survival. Across the Norse world, stones became silent judges. Every village, every clan, every coastal outpost had its own testing stones. They were not uniform or standardized. Each stone had its own quirks: slippery edges worn by rain, sharp corners that dug into the palms, awkward shapes that forced you to use your whole body. To lift one was not just a demonstration of strength, but of grit, technique, and endurance. There are stories of men traveling miles just to attempt a particular stone, not for fame, not for glory, but to prove to themselves that they were worthy. Some stones weighed as much as 150 kilograms, others exceeded 200. The legendary Husafell stone, still used in strongman competitions today, weighs 186 kilograms. It wasn't originally a test of strength. It was simply a farm stone used to block pens. But soon men began lifting it as a rite of passage, a way to measure themselves against the generations before them. When you picture a Viking warrior, imagine someone who didn't grow strength artificially but earned it through daily hardships. Stones lifted not for sport, but for identity. Today's science tells us something the Vikings intuitively understood. Lifting irregular, heavy objects builds real-world strength in ways that barbells cannot. It forces your muscles to activate stabilizers, recruit multiple chains, and adapt to unpredictable weight distribution. Modern functional training echoes this, yet the Vikings mastered it centuries earlier, carving their power from nature's own uneven shapes. The takeaway is simple. Strength starts with lifting what challenges you, not what looks impressive. Number 2, rowing the world's longest gym routine. Now picture this: 40 men packed into a wooden longship, seated on oars that could reach up to 6 meters in length. Some of these oars were so heavy, up to 40 kilograms, that rowing wasn't just locomotion. It was a full-body workout unrivaled by any modern rowing machine. The Vikings rowed through storms against frigid winds for hours without rest. Their shoulders grew wide, their grip unbreakable, their backs coiled like ropes from the repetitive, punishing rhythm. This wasn't optional. If a man couldn't hold his pace, the ship slowed, The crew suffered, and enemies gained an advantage. Scientists who've studied Viking skeletal remains have found evidence that confirms this lifestyle. Thickened bones, enlarged muscle attachment sites, and spinal robustness far beyond that of average medieval Europeans. The constant rowing created warriors with incredible pulling strength and stamina. Rowing was also a mental ritual. Imagine the sound, the creaking of timber, the splash of synchronized oars, the grunts of men pushing their limits. Think about what that teaches a person: discipline, unity, and the ability to stay calm when every stroke feels like the last you can give. Modern endurance athletes talk about entering the flow state, a meditative rhythm where body and mind fuse. Viking rowers lived in that flow for hours, training their nervous systems not just for stamina, but for resilience, for the ability to keep going long after the body begged to stop. That's the overlooked secret of Viking strength. Their training wasn't just physical, it was psychological conditioning to endure discomfort without breaking. Today we chase quick workouts. They lived inside long ones. Number 3, the forgotten calisthenics of the Norse. When most people imagine Viking training, they picture swords and shields. But what they often forget is that the vast majority of Viking strength training came from bodyweight drills. Long before push-ups and squats were given names, the Norse practiced their own variations daily. Consider the life of a Viking child. By the age of 5 or 6, they were already climbing rocks, running through forests, wrestling with friends, and helping with chores. Their bodies were conditioned through play, labor, and instinctive movement. Their calisthenics were simple but brutal. They performed squats while carrying firewood or water buckets. They did pull-up motions when hauling ropes. They performed planks and crawls without knowing the words for them, just by living their lives. More formal drills existed too. Warriors practiced leaping drills to strengthen their legs and increase their agility. They jumped over logs, ditches, and streams, often while holding weapons. They did grip drills using wet ropes that slipped through fingers unless held with iron determination. They performed partner carries and resisted pushes during wrestling drills. These movements built stability, balance, and flexibility. Viking warriors were not bulky. They were wiry, resilient, and explosive. Their strength was the kind you earn from functional repetition, the kind that doesn't fade when a workout is over, because it's part of how you live. Research today reveals that bodyweight training builds a foundation for long-term strength better than almost any other method. The Vikings didn't know the science, but they lived the results. Their daily takeaway was woven into life. Move your body in many ways. Strength comes from repetition, variety, and consistency, not complexity. Number 4, combat drills that built battlefield monsters. Now imagine the clang of steel in an open field. Viking warriors didn't just swing swords wildly. They trained movements with precision. Combat drills were structured, repetitive, and designed to simulate the chaos of battle. A warrior might spend hours practicing shield strikes against wooden posts. These drills strengthen the shoulders, forearms, and core. They also condition the mind to react instinctively. Shield edges were used not only defensively, but offensively, to bash, hook, and control opponents. That required strength and technique. Sword and axe drills were equally taxing. Swinging a sword for minutes is easy. Swinging one for an hour is agony. Warriors practiced cuts, thrusts, and blocks in continuous sequences, training endurance along with precision. Some would strap extra weight to their practice weapons, much like modern athletes using weighted bats or resistance training to speed up reflexes under real conditions. Spears were the most common battlefield weapon, and training with them was a full-body endurance challenge. Thrusting repeatedly built shoulder resilience, tricep strength, and explosive hip power. Viking sagas mention men who could thrust their spears so fast that opponents could barely see the movements. Wrestling, known as glima, was the heart of Viking combat training. It wasn't just a sport, it was a way to build balance, coordination, and the ability to control another person's body. Think of it as a blend between judo and Greco-Roman wrestling. Practitioners learned foot sweeps, hip throws, and leverage-based maneuvers. This meant even smaller warriors could overpower larger opponents using physics, not just force. Modern combat sports confirm the Viking principle. Strength without skill is wasted energy. Skill without conditioning is a quick defeat. True power is the fusion of both. Number 5. Endurance built in harsh landscapes. Strength alone did not make a Viking feared. It was their endurance, their ability to travel for days, fight for hours, and survive in brutal conditions. That made them legendary. Imagine waking before dawn in a Scandinavian winter. Frost bites your fingers. Your breath hangs in the air. Your boots sink into snow as you walk miles to check fishing nets or tend farm animals. Your body learns discomfort as normal, movement as necessity. Traveling itself was training. Viking warriors routinely walked long distances while carrying weapons, tools, and provisions. Some carried loads exceeding 30 kilograms across rugged terrain. The uneven, rocky landscapes built ankle stability, hip endurance, and full-body strength without them ever thinking of it as exercise. Cold exposure taught them resilience that modern science is just beginning to rediscover. Studies now show that cold activates brown fat, boosts metabolism, and increases mental alertness. All benefits Vikings absorbed naturally from living in their environment. Even their diet supported endurance training. High-fat fish, thick stews, barley bread, and fermented foods that kept them fueled for long stretches. They weren't eating for aesthetics. They ate to survive long voyages and physically demanding days. This section of the Viking ritual teaches us something profound. Endurance isn't built in comfort. It's built in the moments when you choose movement over ease, effort over rest, resilience over retreat. Number 6. Strength as spiritual identity. For the Vikings, strength wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The Norse believed that a strong body was a vessel for a strong soul. Their gods, Thor, Odin, Frey, were all depicted as figures who valued power, determination, and endurance. Strength rituals had meaning beyond fitness. They were acts of self-definition. A man lifted a stone not to impress others, but to affirm his place in the world. A woman trained with bow or tool, not because she had to, but because resilience was part of their cultural DNA. Even sagas weren't mere stories, they were lessons. Heroes who displayed strength were praised not simply for muscle, but for qualities like courage, discipline, and perseverance. These values wove themselves into the daily habits of ordinary people. When a Viking trained, he wasn't sculpting a body, he was shaping a reputation, a lineage, a legacy. Modern psychology tells us that identity-based habits last longer than goal-based habits. When you see yourself as a strong person, your behaviors follow naturally. The Vikings understood this intuitively. Their unspoken wisdom was this: train your identity and your body will follow. Number 7. What Viking strength can teach us today? So what does all this ancient training mean for us now? It means you don't need a gym to build strength. You don't need perfect equipment, ideal conditions, or a perfect plan. You just need consistency, creativity, and a willingness to push against resistance, whatever form it takes. Lift irregular objects, carry heavy loads, row, walk, climb, crawl, pull, push. Train your body in the ways it was designed to move. Develop endurance by embracing discomfort. Build resilience by facing challenges rather than avoiding them. Let strength become something you practice, not something you display. Let movement become a reflection of who you are, not just what you want to look like. The Vikings show us a path back to something simple: functional strength that connects body and spirit, discipline and freedom, effort and meaning. Live better, not just longer. In the end, Viking strength rituals were not about domination or aggression. They were about living fully in a harsh world, meeting life with power instead of fear, with resilience instead of hesitation. They remind us that strength is not a number on a barbell. It's a way of moving through the world. It's the ability to lift what burdens us, to carry what matters, to endure what challenges us, and to push forward even when the path is steep and cold. We may not row longships or lift ancient stones, but we still face storms, struggles, and battles of our own. Their example invites us to train not only our muscles, but our spirit, to live better, not just longer. Because the strongest people aren't those who avoid discomfort, they're the ones who choose to grow from it. And in that sense, perhaps the Viking spirit lives on inside each of us, waiting to be awakened. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button for more videos.